And we're rolling.
All righty, well, let's get started. Well, it is Monday, August 17th, and we're Dee and Larry Korchin, and welcome to our weekly team call. Anything before we get started?
Well, I think you guys know we're super excited. We are going to be, we've been asked to speak on Dr. A's call, and that's at 8 o'clock. So we're going to end this call at 7:55 so everybody can hop over. Julie Apple's going to put the link in the chat if you didn't see it from our Facebook page. But we're going to have to bounce out early because we have to log into the green room or whatever there. So I'm so grateful. Julie Apple is going to take over as host for us tonight. But what we're going to do is tonight we're going to continue our discussion on the fundamental skills. And tonight's topic is follow-up. So we've got some great coaches that are going to be sharing with us. But before we go, Larry is going to open us with our inspiration.
All right, so inspiration tonight. First of all, one book that's really important to us, and actually I'm going to be sharing a little bit on the next call, but is Chase the Lion by Mark Batterson. It's a great book, very inspiring, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what he talks about as far as the Wright brothers. So let me share this with you. In the summer of 1896, 25-year-old Orville Wright contracted typhoid fever. For several days, he was in a near-death delirium. It would be an entire month before he could sit up in bed and several more weeks before he could get out of bed. And it may be the best thing that ever happened to him. Orville's brother, Wilbur, had taken an intense interest in human flight. And with Orville bedridden, he had a captive audience. Wilbur read aloud to Orville, and that's how the Wright brothers crossed paths with their lion. 500-pound lions often hide within the pages of a book, just waiting for a dreamer to flip the page. Your dream may be one book, one page away. Bishop Milton Wright had quite the library for the late 19th century. The bishop had a holy curiosity about all of life, but he had particular fascination with the flight of birds, which explains an atypical title on his shelf, Animal Mechanism, a treatise on terrestrial and aerial locomotion. By the time Wilbur finished reading the book, he had discovered his destiny. The father's fascination had become the brother's obsession. On May 30th, 1899, Wilbur wrote the most significant letter of his life, given the chain reaction it set in motion. He addressed the letter written on Wright Cycle Company stationery to the Smithsonian Institution, informing them they had begun a systematic study of human flight. He asked for everything written on the subject, which wasn't much, but one book, L'Empire del Air by French farmer, poet, and student of flight Louis-Pierre Molinard, was like a prophet crying in the wilderness, exhorting the world to repent of its unbelief in the possibility of human flight. Exhorting the world to repent of its unbelief in the possibility of human flight. I like that sentence a lot. It convicts me, challenges me. What impossibility do you need to repent of? It's not just sin that we need to repent of. The impossible is an illusion. The Wright brothers had no education, no crowdfunding, no friends in high places. All they had was a dream, but that's all it takes if coupled with tenacious stick-to-itiveness over and over again. The Wright brothers failed to fly, but they refused to give up. They learned from each and every failure until they defied gravity for 12 seconds at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina on December 17, 1903. The impossible is temporary. In the summer of 1896, human flight was science fiction. It's now a daily reality. At any given moment on any given day, 5,000 airplanes carrying 1 million passengers are flying through the troposphere at 300 miles per hour. And it all started with a dream. It always does. Wilbur Wright repented of his unbelief in the possibility of human flight, and the rest is history. Repent of unbelief in the possibility of your dream. So again, I found this today. I really enjoyed it. Just again, there's so many things right away we think no, and it can't happen. And just wanted to share that today. So I don't know where you are, where your thinking is, wherever it may be. I hope that speaks to you. And just a little side note, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this, but Shauna Wright Davis is a descendant of the Wright brothers. So anyway. So a little bit of history there.
That is very, very awesome. Well, hopefully you got a chance to watch the training from Dan Bell. So we posted that recording before, but even if you didn't, you're going to get a lot out of tonight's call. We've talked about all the fundamental skills so far of identifying who we want to talk to, approaching to see if there is interest, doing the presentation to see if there's a match, and sometimes it's a not yet, right? So what's the next step? What is follow-up? So a critical part of our journey, and I think a lot what sometimes gets missed. So we have 3 people that are going to share tonight. We're going to start first with Carol Quintero. She's going to share about her takeaways, what's been working with her. We're going to follow that with Gina Manley, and then Julie. And we'll be slipping out at some point. We'll see you guys over on the other call, but I can't wait to hear what you guys share. Carol, you want to unmute?
I'm unmuted, and I thought how appropriate that Shauna's a descendant of the Wrights, because we sure do enjoy watching her fly. Okay, in regards to follow-up, I think it's really important to never, as Dan Bell said in the training, to never leave a meeting with the prospect undecided without scheduling a follow-up meeting, preferably within 24 to 48 hours. That's so important. People might say to you, well, let's touch base next week, and that could be days away. And as Dan mentioned, it's really ideal to say, it would be in your best interest, actually, if we speak tomorrow, because this is all fresh in your mind, and I'd like to be able to cover those issues while that's the case. So how about tomorrow? And when you do schedule a follow-up, it's always recommended that you give 2 different times to choose from. So to say, for example, how's tomorrow evening, or do you prefer the next morning? To give them 2 different times. And that, of course, would be that you've already looked at your schedule to see when you're available. And if for some reason you know perhaps about this person's their life, let's say that you know that they work full time and that there'd be absolutely no point in you saying, can I speak to you tomorrow morning or tomorrow, or do you prefer tomorrow afternoon, because you know that they work. But what you can do is say, okay, knowing that, do you prefer that we speak at 5:30 in the afternoon, or is 8 p.m. better for you? So always give the option of 2 different times. And when you call them to follow up, you should already have visualized in your mind that they are going to say yes to becoming your client. That's really important, because what you believe you will achieve. And so that's really important to keep in mind. In addition to that, it would be encouraging for you to start the conversation by saying, I'm sure that you've given a lot of thought to our conversation, and I want to let you know that I have as well. And I absolutely see this as a solution to what you said that you wanted to accomplish, which is that we can help you with this and this and this. And you're not saying this and this and this, but you're repeating the things that they told you that they actually want to accomplish themselves, as well as how those changes are going to enhance their life. So as an example, that you said that you want to have a structured eating program so that you will finally know how not to overeat or to make the appropriate choices for your health. You also mentioned that you wanted to have more energy so that you and your sweetheart could go hiking and biking and kayaking. And I just want to let you know that I still feel so strongly that our program absolutely will help you with your goals and will help you get there and attain the life that you want. And then what I love to add is, and so if you're ready to get started, I'm ready to help you. And then just shut your mouth. Because if they have questions, they'll say to you, well, actually, I have some questions. And you can say, great. And with that, I think I've probably taken up my time. I don't want to do the whole follow-up, but I hope that was helpful.
That was great. Thank you, Carol. We appreciate that. And again, great points. So many great points from Dan on that. And thank you for pointing them out. So moving on, I think we have Gina next. Is that correct, Gina?
That is. Hello. Thanks, Carol. Thank you, Dee and Larry, for having me speak today. So I always joke that whenever we come back to the training and listen, I always have different listening ears on every time I hear something. And as Dan said, you only catch about 10%. And so one of the things that I heard that never really occurred to me before, that follow-up actually for me begins in the health assessment. Because like Carol said, when you are repeating back to them what they're looking for, what they want, you're using their words and they're hearing their words come back to them. And it's already begins the follow-up phase. So, of course, a lot of times they aren't ready. And I do the same thing that Carol does, where I open up my phone and I pick out a couple of times to choose from and get that appointment on the calendar. I've got a stack of health assessments that I didn't do that with, and they've never come back to the, they've never come back. And so I had to learn to really set that appointment. And I give them action steps. So for example, if I haven't already added them to Healthy for Life, I tell them that I'm going to do that and tag them in 2 posts. I send an email with the Charlene Green video, with the video on the Fuelings. I might send a trilogy depending on what our conversation was. And that way they've got something that they can watch and listen to before we meet again. And again, it goes back to that 10%. They only caught about 10% of what you said or what they remember. And so this gives them something to watch. It reiterates everything, and then we cover everything in that follow-up conversation. Sometimes they're still not ready. And, you know, our job is to keep asking and asking why and trying to uncover maybe what the underlying factor is. Often their heart is in it, but their head's not, and they've got to be together, you know? So one of the things that Dan said was no multiple follow-up syndrome. And we don't want to beat them over the head with keep following up. So sometimes you have to move them to the friend zone and go back to checking on them and commenting on their post. And if they're local, maybe meeting them for coffee or going for a walk or something like that. You let them know that you're interested in them, you care about them, and that you are in it for the long haul. And I've had clients who I did a health assessment with that called me up months and months later and said, I'd like to thank you for nudging me and not hitting me over the head. I'm ready. And so that is my take on what works for me for follow-up.
Thank you, Gina. I learned a lot too. I think Dan is right that we only retain like 10% from when we watch it the first time to the repeat. And both you and Carol said great things. I love about setting up the follow-up when you're finishing the call, so setting it up for the next one. But again, what you said, Gina, was that you never wanted to get to that situation like, are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? You know, like definitely zeroing it back to what they wanted, like Carol said. And then again, if it's not moving, kind of taking it back to that friend zone. And I think that's where a lot of us get stuck. We start to feel awkward. What should we do or not say at this point? And Julie, I know you'll have a lot to share because you've been doing this for a long time and are really, really good. One, you're an example of somebody who wasn't quite ready yet between me and you and my pace and following up with you, but also you've just kind of got this knack for reading people and when to push and when to let them take their time.
Yeah, as I was listening to Dan's and listening to you guys share, I think the thing that I always think about is I look at it as like bouncing a ball back and forth. And I feel like what they put in is what I reflect, and I want that bounce to happen naturally. So when I do a assessment, I think I shared a couple weeks ago on one of the other topics, I immediately tell them, here's what I'm going to do. I'll add you to our Healthy for Life group, and I'm going to send you this email that will recap what we talked about. I want you to read that, and I'm going to follow up with you in a day or two because I want to hear what you think. And I want to talk more. So I immediately plan a follow-up. And I love what you said, Carol. Like, I don't end a call unless we have a plan, because otherwise I feel like it's just totally open-ended and clients or candidates are like, well, I'm not ready, but I don't know what to do now. So if you don't have any system set up, that would probably be my biggest encouragement, is set up a follow-up system. And I am like a big system person, so I have to have something set up. So my follow-up system looks kind of like this. I'll give you guys like the brief version. But I basically, on my calendar, after I send that email and add them to Healthy for Life, I put on my calendar either the next day or no later than 2 days, because I think that's what Dan said. Make sure you're putting a reminder to follow up with them. So because I send that email, I can have something to ask them, because if you don't do anything, what are you going to say in your follow-up? You know, so in my text follow-up, I always say, hey, Mary, it was so great to talk the other night. What did you think of the email? Any questions I can help with? That's the text I send. That's all I send. I keep it really short and sweet. And it gives them the opportunity to write back and say, well, you know, I was confused about this, or I have more questions about that. So then I can answer what's on their mind, because otherwise it doesn't really matter, because you want to help them with what they have questions about, right? So that's how I approach it. Send that text, and then immediately I can help them if they're bouncing the ball back and forth, you know? Once I've done that, usually what happens is you get to a place where it's like, well, why don't we plan a few more minutes? You have some questions, I'll be happy to share. Let's talk tonight. And then you can schedule the time based on what's good for them. Or sometimes what happens is people are like, I just don't really think I'm ready, or I just don't really think this is for me. You may be able to help, but a lot of times those people are just not ready. So that's where you just get to the place of, okay, what's my system? For me, my system is keep them in Healthy for Life, add them to my newsletter, and then I will maybe follow up with them in a month or so. Find what works for you. I just like to give them a few weeks, because the last thing you want is them to feel like you're chasing you. Because remember, they need us. We don't need them, right? So they need the gift that we have. So you want to come across confident, and you want to come across that you have a gift for them. And who said the other day, I think Jordan, we have the cookie, right? So let them come back, but you want to do your part in bouncing that ball back and forth. So that's how, if you guys can visualize it and that helps you, that's how I look at it, is like a ball bouncing back and forth. So because I'm going to put the link in the chat for our next call to get us on the chat, I would love to see if you guys have a follow-up system, put a 1 in the chat. If you need a follow-up system, put a 2 in the chat. There's no right or wrong. Like, we are so happy to help. But I would say the more, yeah, see, there's a lot of 2s. Make a system, guys, because everything we do, the more systems we have, the more simple it is, right? There's some 1. So if you need help, like, reach out to me. I'm happy to help. Dee and Larry, all of us, your mentors, we will help you set up a system. So that, any questions, or if you guys want to just take yourself off mute, we have just a few more minutes. Would love to hear any questions or suggestions. If you have other follow-up system suggestions, feel free to take yourself off of mute and just pipe in. The other thing, while anybody wants to jump in, that I had written down is kind of the question of how much to follow up. I would say if it's my system, I would say that once I followed up with them, like, the other thing I do a lot is I put them on my follow-up Friday. And that for me is I follow up with people that I haven't talked to, or maybe I go through my assessments and look at who I haven't reconnected with. So usually my follow-up Friday is going through a binder, checking out who I haven't talked with, and I'll follow up with those people. But I only do that probably like once a month. I'll reach out. what was so neat, and I know Dee and Larry jumped off, but Dee followed up with me for about 4 years. And it took me that long to be ready. And it wasn't like she hounded me every single month, but it would be like maybe every 6 months. She would just reach out to ask how I was doing. Or if Dr. A had a new tool or book, something, she reached out and told me about it. One time he was coming to Charlotte and she asked if I wanted to go with her. And I told her no. I was like, I don't know who Dr. A is. So it doesn't hurt to follow up, but you guys find what feels right for you guys and go with your gut, right? Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I also know that there are a lot of new coaches on the call who have no idea that a no doesn't necessarily mean a no. It just means a not right now.
Hey.
And so that follow-up system that you're talking about, Julie, is so perfect because you're just touching on people, and that famous saying that people don't want to know what you know, they want to know how much you care. And so if we continue just reaching out to them and showing them that we care about them, then when their no becomes a yes, we are definitely the people that they're going to turn to, and they'll become our clients.
It's so true. Yeah, that's awesome, Carol, because I just actually helped one. I looked back at our initial conversation was in December. He had reached out. He wasn't ready. And he basically told me that on the phone. And he's like, I just don't think I'm quite ready. I said, that's okay. I'll add you to our groups. I'd love for you to stay in touch. We'll just, you let me know. So I had reached out to him one other time. I let a couple months, actually, it was probably 4 months go by when Optavia offered that incentive the first month. I reached out to him and told him, hey, we have a really awesome one-time deal, never done in the history of the company. He still wasn't ready, y'all. And I just said, that's okay. So wouldn't you know, I sent my newsletter last Tuesday. I hit send, and not even 5 minutes went by, and he bounced back and he said, I don't know if you send these newsletters or if they're automated, but I want to talk to you about the program. I'm ready. And I was like, okay. So it just shows you, it only takes just dripping on people. It had been since December 19th, and he decided and he got set up today, so look how many months went by. So my encouragement for you guys, whether you've been coaching a long time or this is your first week, don't give up on people. Just treat it as you would a friend or a family member, and stay in touch with them and bounce the ball back and forth. So I hope that helps you guys. Is there anything, Rebecca, you asked, is there ever a point where you stop following up? How do you handle following up with people who seem irritated by it? That's a great couple of questions. I would say I don't ever stop following up with people. I may not in my texts or phone calls, but I will always keep them in my newsletter contact list. So I look at that as if they feel like they're irritated, sometimes what I've done is I've said hey, I will leave the ball in your court. When you want to talk more, you just let me know when you're ready, and I'll be happy to answer. So I'll leave it that way so they don't feel like I'm just abandoning them, but I'll say the ball's in your court. When you want to talk more, just let me know. And sometimes I think as a coach, we can get in that scarcity mentality where you feel like you need them because you haven't had a new client in a while. Anybody relate? Then you start to feel like, I need to talk to that person. I need them. But people read that. They know that, whether you realize it or not. So if you can just detach from that outcome and you just love them and keep bouncing the ball, but if they seem irritated, let it go. It's okay. You just add them to your newsletter list, and guess what? When they're ready, they'll reach back out to you because you've done your part, So I would say, don't keep aggravating people. You just want to love them and let them come back. And we know they will. That's what's so great about our program is we have the best. So we know it's a matter of them coming back to us. It's not us chasing them. And I see Katie, I hope that was helpful, Rebecca. What about when you have done a Coach Explore and have sent them additional videos to view, but they haven't had time to watch them yet? What is the follow-up? That's a great question too. That happens a lot because people are like, I wasn't really interested, or I got other things to do. I'm too busy right now. I have that often where people are like, I haven't even gotten to watch it. So that happened just recently. And what I did is I had invited a couple people to our convention, and they were like, I never really got to tune in. They were one of the friends' invites. So what I did is I sent them the Dan Bell video or the link for this past Saturday and said, hey, I think you might find this really helpful. And I waited until Saturday morning and I texted that Saturday morning. So it literally gave them a couple hours notice, and then people could follow, they could go to that link and go watch it. So sometimes it just pays off to send another little like, hey, did you know our company is doing this tomorrow? Would you like the invite? And I always usually ask a question instead of dumping it on people and just say, hey, this is happening tomorrow. Check it out. I'll say, hey, would you be interested? The company is offering this awesome call tomorrow at 11:30. Would you want to be invited? I can send you the link, ? And let them tell you if they want to be invited, So don't dump something on people expecting them to want it. Ask them if they want it, because then that shows, are they still interested, right? If they say yes, then okay, they may still be interested. So let me send this and bounce that ball back, And then if people still are not responsive, I look at it as they're just not ready yet. If they don't respond to you, or they don't necessarily seem excited, that's okay. Add them as a friend on Facebook. They'll get to watch you. If you're doing Facebook posts and encouragement, they'll see that and they'll be wanting eventually what you're doing, So it's just a matter of reading people and figuring out, do they want it? And then when do they want it, So I hope that's helpful for you guys. I'm going to put in in our chat. Let me see if it allows me to put it in there. Here is the link for Dr. A's call. So I want to tee that up. Dee and Larry, you guys, we all love them. Obviously, they're incredible leaders. So I used to work with Larry when finance days. So he's like my Optavia dad. And so I just have a super love for them. So if you guys don't know who they are yet, or you want to learn more, make sure you're going over to Dr. A's call. Listen to their tips. I think it's incredible that we now have an integrated presidential director as our leader, and Dee made the comment the other day, right? How exciting. Our team leaders are IPDs. So Dee made the comment the other day in a text with some other coaches that there's some incredible support offered as globals. And then she said, I'm finding out there's even more support as an IPD. So she said, just more incentive for us. If you want more and more support, the way to do it is keep growing. So that is happening in 5 minutes. I put the link in here for the next Zoom. So everybody, hope this was helpful tonight. It's been fun to be together with you guys. If you have other questions, ask away in our coach group, because that's really what it's for, is what questions we want to help. We'll all be helpful, So use our coach group, ask away with questions. We're happy to help you with this system. So see you guys soon.